The 5 mistakes that keep people financially stuck. Most people assume financial struggle is the result of insufficient income, bad luck, or lack of discipline. The dominant advice is this: most people are doing okay, so if you follow what most people do, you follow the median or the average. You budget carefully and slowly work your way up, you'll be okay. But this framing hides a much deeper, more subtle issue. Many people are functioning with a flawed mental model about money and day-to-day life. Today, I want to present an idea that financial outcomes are less about individual decisions and a lot more about systems and assumptions that are guiding those decisions. People who find themselves repeatedly struggling financially aren't making dramatic errors. They're not making blunders that are huge and easy to detect. Instead, they're making consistent, minute misadjustments that add up to something significant over time. And I don't mean a month or a year. What I mean is decades. If you take anything away from this video, I hope it's this idea at the center that financial life is not a single framework. Financial life is a set of feedback loops rather than a fixed state. By understanding how direction, not just position, determine financial health, we can reframe the 5 most common mistakes people make about averages, the cost of living, budgeting, and income. And the most tricky of all is the binary thinking that you're either good with money or you're not. And begin to see a path forward that is more dynamic, more realistic, and ultimately more effective. There's a particular kind of advice that sounds responsible, measured, sensible, and safe. It usually goes something like this: live within your means, follow the average, budget carefully, don't take unnecessary risks. And on the surface, this advice feels right. It feels like the kind of thing a reasonable person would say, the kind of thing you'd want your kids to follow. But there's a lot more to this. A lot of people who follow that advice still struggle financially. Not because they're careless and not because they're lazy, but because the advice itself, while definitely well-intentioned, is built on assumptions that don't actually hold up in the real world. And over time, those assumptions create patterns. Patterns that are hard to see from the inside. Patterns that keep people stuck. Today, I want to walk through 5 of these patterns. 5 mistakes that at first glance don't look like mistakes. 5 ideas that feel reasonable but lead people in the opposite direction of where they actually want to end up. And more importantly, I want to offer a different way of seeing all of this. Because the real shift isn't in any single tactic that you undertake. It is in how you think about money altogether. The mistake number 1 is believing that you want to be the average. We're surrounded by averages. Magazines, newspapers, the internet, they talk about averages and medians. Median income, median rent, median home price, average salary for your age or your occupation. And without even realizing it, we start to internalize this idea that average is where we want to be, that the average is the target, that if we can just land somewhere in the middle, we'll be okay. But here's the strange part. No one actually wants an average life. No one wakes up one morning and says, I hope my financial situation is exactly typical. No one dreams about a median experience, because average isn't the goal. It is a statistical description, and in most cases, it's not even a good one. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you live in an area where the median household income is $75,000 a year. That sounds reasonable, stable even, like you could live well on that amount. But what that number hides is distribution of money. It hides the fact that many people are earning far more and are pulling the average up, while many others are struggling way below it. It hides the fact that the cost of living, what you actually need to live, may have risen faster than that number reflects. And most importantly, it hides the fact that being average in a system that's not under pressure is not stability. Things will go wrong. You are still exposed to risk, to the unpredictables. Even for younger me at first, I thought the averages were helpful benchmarks, just a way to calibrate my own expectations. But then I started paying attention and I noticed something. People who aimed for average often stayed stuck. And people who questioned the average, who treated it as a warning sign instead of a goal, tended to move in a different direction. They made different assumptions, they asked different questions, and they made different decisions. They did not assume that being in the middle was safe or comfortable. They assumed that the middle was crowded and fragile. And that little mind shift alone changed how they approached everything else about money. Mistake number 2, underestimating the true living cost, the true cost of living. Most people think they understand their cost of living pretty well. They know what their car payment is, they know their rent or mortgage, they know roughly how much they spend on groceries or eating out. But what they often miss is the view of the entire picture. Because cost of living isn't just the bills you can list off the top of your head. It's the vacations you take. It's whether you're going to help your kids pay for college. It's how long your commute is and what kind of car you drive. It's if you have any expensive hobbies that you pursue. Let's take a simple example. 2 people live in the same exact city and they both earn $80,000 a year. One of them feels entirely financially comfortable and the other one feels constantly strained. Why? It's not just rent, it's everything around the rent. It's the restaurants of their neighborhood, it's the expectations of their friends' circle, the convenient services they've normalized for themselves, and the small recurring expenses they're willing to pay for, but that also don't feel optional anymore. Living in a high-cost environment doesn't just raise your cost of living for your rent or housing. Living in a high-cost environment doesn't just raise your fixed expenses. It also raises your entire baseline for the rest of your behavior. And that baseline is incredibly sticky. Once you adapt to a certain level of convenience, comfort, or social expectations, it's very hard to scale it back. Not impossible, but psychologically excruciatingly difficult. So what happens? People anchor to their current lifestyle and then try to solve the problem around it. They budget harder, they cut small things out of their life that they enjoy, and they look for marginal savings. But they never question the structure itself. But that's exactly where the real leverage is. Because sometimes the issue isn't that you're bad with money. It's that you're operating inside a system where the default settings are way too expensive. Mistake number 3, misdiagnosing the problem as budgeting instead of spending. Budgeting has become the go-to solution to financial stress. If you're struggling financially, the default assumption is very simple and repeated often. You need a better budget. Track your expenses and categorize your spending. Optimize your allocations to things that are important to you. And to be clear, I'm not saying budgeting has no place. Budgeting can be a useful tool, but it is most often misapplied. Because budgeting is simply a tool for managing known constraints. It does not solve deeper behavioral patterns. Let me explain. Imagine someone who consistently overspends on dining out because they're not proactive about planning when they're going to be hungry and packing a lunch to work. They create a budget. They set a limit. They track every single meal they purchase when they're out of the house. And for a few weeks, it kind of works. But then something happens. A stressful week, a social event, or a moment of fatigue. This is inevitable. And the old pattern returns. Not because the budget was wrong, but because the budget was addressing the symptom, not the driver. The real issue wasn't the allocation of funds. It was the relationship to spending. The role that spending played in their life. Was it the convenience? Was it the reward? What is it the feeling of wanting to belong socially? Until that question can be clearly answered, budgeting is simply a kind of surface-level control mechanism. And surface-level controls don't hold up under pressure. People don't break budgets because they're irresponsible or careless. They break budgets because the underlying behavior that caused the issue in the first place has not changed. The behavior doesn't change through formalized spreadsheets. It changes because of awareness. Mistake number 4, assuming it's an income problem when it's really a lifestyle problem. This one is subtle and incredibly common. Someone feels financially stretched, and the immediate conclusion is, I need to make more money, which again sounds totally reasonable. After all, who wouldn't want to make more money? More income should solve the financial problem. Except sometimes it does, and most times it doesn't. In fact, many times it can make things even worse, because the income doesn't exist in isolation from everything else. It interacts with the lifestyle, and lifestyle tends to expand to meet the income, simply, slowly, gradually, almost invisibly. A modest raise turns into a nicer apartment. A bonus turns into a new car. A promotion turns into upgraded expectations. Just because you went on a nice new vacation from your bonus, now you expect a nice vacation every 6 months. And it's not just from yourself, but from the people around you as well. And suddenly you're earning more, but feeling the same pressure, or maybe even more. I once spoke to someone who had doubled their income over 5 years. They've worked hard and they've certainly earned those promotions. On paper, he was doing exceptionally well. But when I asked him how did he feel financially now that he was earning significantly more, he said honestly, not that much different. And that's the trap. Because if your lifestyle grows in proportion to your income, your margin doesn't actually change. And it's margin, not the income, is what actually creates stability. It creates resilience and then allows for more options. At first, this seems completely counterintuitive. We're taught to focus on earning more. But the real leverage only shows up when you decouple lifestyle growth from income growth. Sure, you shouldn't eliminate it entirely, but slowing it down helps immensely. You have to be intentional about it. Because without that separation, income just becomes another kind of a treadmill. And no matter how fast you're gonna run, you're not gonna get ahead. Mistake number 5, thinking about money as a fixed state instead of a direction that you're moving in. This is the biggest mistake of all. And this is the one that ties everything else together. Most people think about money in static terms. You're broke, you're okay, you're rich. Maybe there's a middle category or two. The poor class, the middle earning class, the rich. But fundamentally, it is seen as a fixed position. It is a number in a bank account, a snapshot. And that way of thinking is incredibly limiting because it ignores movement. It ignores trajectory. It ignores the systems that you unconsciously execute that are constantly shaping that number either up or down. A person with only $5,000 in savings and improving their habits may be in a much stronger position than someone with $50,000 in savings and quickly deteriorating. But if you only look at the numbers, you will miss that direction entirely. What matters isn't just where you are right now, it's where you're headed. And even more importantly, what forces are pushing you in that direction in the first place. This is exactly the spot where the idea of feedback loops becomes very powerful. Your financial life is not a single variable. You either have more money or less, you either spend more or less, you either earn more or less. It is a multifaceted system. Income influences lifestyle, lifestyle influences spending, spending influences stress, stress influences decisions, decisions influence your future income and your future spending. And around it goes. Some loops reinforce positive movement, others quietly pull you backwards. If you see money as a fixed state, you focus on the snapshots only. If you see it as a system of feedback loops, either reinforcing or destroying each other, you focus on the direction instead. And direction is exactly where the change happens. So let's step back. The 5 mistakes. Not dramatic, not obvious, but deeply influential. Believing average is the goal, underestimating the true cost of your environment, treating budgeting as the ultimate solution instead of examining the spending behaviors, assuming that more income will somehow fix a lifestyle problem, and viewing money as a static position instead of a dynamic system. Individually, each of these creates more friction. Together, they create a kind of invisible gravity, a pull that keeps people in the same place even when they're trying to move forward. But here's the encouraging part. None of these are permanent because they're not real constraints. To a large extent, they're interpretations. And we have ability to change our interpretation. You can choose to see the average differently. You can question the environment you find yourself in. You can examine the role spending plays in your life. You can artificially slow down the expansion of your lifestyle. You can start paying attention to not just position, but direction as well. These are small shifts, but they all add up over time. And over time, they have ability to change the entire system itself. There is a moment when this clicks and people see this clearly. It's not dramatic. There is no sudden breakthrough. People just start noticing patterns, noticing triggers, noticing the difference between what they thought was the problem and what actually is the problem. And once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them, which means you can start to change them gradually, not all at once, deliberately, working with your life and lifestyle and income in a way that aligns with how real life actually works. And that's the shift from control to awareness, from static to dynamic, from reading numbers to understanding systems, from control to awareness, from static to dynamic, from reacting to numbers to understanding systems. Because financial stability isn't a single decision, it's a direction. And the sooner you start thinking in terms of direction, the sooner things will begin to move for you in the direction you want. Thank you.